Okay, let's look at some concepts that are going to be important to you, and it will be important to anyone who takes up any level of skill. Talk about how people learn, how they progress. Typically, what happens is you pick up a new skill, like picking up archery. You get with an instructor, and they put you through a series of instruction. The first time you learn how to do anything, you do it consciously. You haven't yet developed any subconscious skill, and you know you're performing consciously or subconsciously, because if you have to think about it, it's consciously done. If you don't have to think about it, it's being done subconsciously. So when we first pick up a bow and we learn how to hold and aim it, we have to think about and remind ourselves that this is how we hold it. This is the proper way to shoot. But if you work at it long enough and you give it just the right amount of discipline, take the time to hold the bow correctly, practice good form, and shoot enough arrows, you will get to the point to where you can shoot this sport subconsciously. So what happens when that time period passes and you have built what we call the base? You're now operating subconsciously. You really don't have to think about it anymore. You know how to get a 10. So that's how the conscious and subconscious mind work together. The ideal scenario is simple. When you're shooting an end, you would like to shoot each and every shot on that end subconsciously. But what happens much of the time? Much of the time, our conscious mind simply gets in the way. The conscious mind decides it wants to perform the shot. The conscious mind says, I'm going to get involved. And as soon as it says, I'm going to take over, the subconscious mind, which is more than capable of performing the task at hand, is more than willing to allow the conscious mind to take over. If you have ever experienced this, when the conscious mind gets in the way, we tend to become extra careful. We become outcome oriented, and we start to think about how we're doing something. The conscious mind can only think about one thing at a time, while the subconscious can think of millions of things at once. So as long as the conscious mind gets in the way, the subconscious mind can't shoot the shot. As a matter of fact, in archery it becomes harder to shoot when you're trying rather than trusting. Your timing isn't right, and you start to become outcome oriented rather than trusting your ability and allowing yourself to release the shot. So that's how the conscious and subconscious work together. And there's a lot that has been written on the relationship between the conscious and subconscious. So much that you would only think there were two mental processes. But as I said earlier, there are three. And the third one is called self-image. And it's the self-image that makes a huge difference in whether or not you can use what you know during a competition. The self-image and winning are directly related. Here's how the self-image works. The self-image makes you act like you. It's where your habits and attitudes are. If you think you can beat me in a shoot-off, and I think you can beat me, it's over for me. It's your belief structure. The self-image is the most important factor in whether or not you will win a tournament. If you believe you can win, you at least have a chance. If you don't, you have no chance. So how do we build that self-image? This is the thing you need to know first about the mental game. There are three mental processes, and the self-image needs to be protected from the beginning. If you understand what makes a self-image grow and shrink, you can determine if the self-image is growing or shrinking. You need to know if the self-image is getting better or if it's getting worse. And you can't shoot better than the size of your self-image. Remember, performance and self-image are always equal. Now let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. We have a brand new shooter. What's the size of his self-image? The self-image of this shooter is, I can't hit that target. I can't shoot 10s. Now this is reality. He can't hit the 10 ring from the beginning. So what's the self-image? The self-image is, I can't shoot 10s. So he practices and practices until he is getting 10s, until he is getting X's. As a matter of fact, he gets pretty good at hitting the 10 ring, and he starts to get more 10s than anything else. He starts to think that he's ready for a competition. He enters a competition, gets into the competition, then changes something. He was hitting the 10 ring 80% of the time, but now he's lucky to hit the 10 ring 70% of the time. Worse, the shooter finds himself with some wild shots, like a 7 or a 5. Now what happened? Did he forget how to shoot? Did he just get stupid all of a sudden? No. The self-image says, it's not like me to shoot good in competition. Oh, it's like me to shoot well in practice, but not when it counts. Until that self-image changes, he is going to be a victim of lower scores in a match than in practice. Now this is common. It is so common that we don't want it to happen to you. It's not necessary for it to happen at all. But it happens, and it happens to many shooters. The size of your self-image is determined by one thing, and that's imprinting. Imprinting can happen in two ways. One is what the environment gives you. Now, your environment gives you an imprint every time you shoot a shot, and that's called an environmental imprint. Every time you shoot a 10, your self-image says, it's like me to shoot a 10. Every time you miss the 10 ring, the self-image says, it's like me to miss the 10 ring. That's an environmental imprint. But the self-image also imprints every time you think about something, every time you talk about something, or write something down, the self-image imprints as well. This is called an imagined imprint. So if you just got finished shooting an end, and let's say it was a bad end, you're not happy at all. I'm a little angry with that, you say. I can't believe I shot an 8. I always do that for some reason. That's an imprint. And your self-image is the sum total of all those imprints. It's important in the beginning and at all times in your shooting career that you understand why everybody is telling you to be positive. So why don't you want to be negative? Because every time you're negative, it's an imprint. And these imprints change your self-image. If there's one thing I wish I could get all shooters to do, it's to keep themselves from beating themselves up. If you can keep shooters from talking about the things that went wrong, you can help build their self-image. But it has become a part of the culture, and we focus on the negative all too often. Just watch the shooters as they go down to retrieve their arrows. You see them frustrated over their bad shots. Sometimes they'll even show other shooters their bad shots. Now we have a whole line of shooters with negative imprinting. Just understand this. Your self-image determines what you are able to do in the future. Is it like you to shoot this score? Is it like you to win this match? And this is determined by imprinting. So if you only think about what you want to have happen, you will increase the likelihood of that thing happening.